round two.
Hi. Sorry about that. These things happen. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as I was saying, Joey is also the president of the Country Day Alumni Council, which is extremely exciting. So Joey's going to talk to us about that too. For anyone just coming on, if you have questions for Joey as we continue our conversation about virtual interviewing, resumes, and starting your own business, that's going to come a little bit later in our chat. So please feel free to put those questions in the comments, and I will try to get at them. But let's just start from the beginning. Let's go back to you in high school. What were some classes? What were you involved in? Just give us a little glimpse into you.
Sure. So what was I involved in? So I played hockey, lacrosse, and was one of the founding members of the Ultimate Frisbee team, which I don't know if it's still a thing or not. But that kind of stemmed from the fact that I took every class that Dr. Freed had offered, which was physics, geology, and oceanography. Became close with him as a teacher, and was at the time was really into Ultimate Frisbee, and I was looking for something to do in fall because I was not athletic enough to be good at football and didn't like to do the fall stuff for hockey. And so he convinced me and a few others to start the Ultimate Frisbee team. And so that's how we kind of spent the fall of my senior year.
That's cool. I actually did not realize that you had started the Ultimate Frisbee team. Outside of athletics and stuff, what were you doing?
Outside of athletics, I, just like every other one else at Country Day, right? Taking classes, like I said, every class that Dr. Freed offered. Was kind of a mediocre student, honestly, kind of the very, B to B plus maybe level, kind of never really settled in as a high academic achiever like a lot of my friends and students at Country Day, and kind of, coasted by here and there, which is unfortunate. But really, just a chance to, hang out with friends and learn what I can.
Yeah, I love that we actually have Amanda Palmer here, who's tuning in on her extracurricular activities. But okay, so that's great. So you then went on to actually play a sport in college. So talk to us about going to Colorado College. What was it like as a college athlete? What did you find easy about the transition to college? And then what was a little bit more challenging for you as you were taking on this new kind of challenge out of school?
For sure. So I think something that Country Day does incredibly well is preparing students for situations where you have to learn to multitask. Right. And that's, being a college athlete, right? It's balancing, 30 to 40 hours a week of practice, film, training, games on top of classwork. And, Country Day, I think, does a really good job of keeping everyone busy all the time, whether that's through athletics, arts, community service, school, social activities, right? And so going into college, I thought I was in a position where I knew how to multitask. I knew how to get my stuff done in the time that I had available. So that was great. My college experience was totally unique and probably different than most. Colorado College is a unique school in the fact that they don't follow a semester plan.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's one of two schools in the country that follows a block plan. So you take one class at a time for 3.5 weeks, minimum 3 hours a day. So you're totally immersed into that subject. The professors are only teaching that class. It starts on a Monday, ends 3 Wednesdays or 4 Wednesdays later, and then you get 5 days off and start over again. And so you do that 8.5 times throughout the year. And so, classes like calculus, 3 hours a day are just awful. But I was a geology major. So I guess, Dr. Freed's teachings, led me to that path. And that was great because I had a 3-week class studying in the Grand Canyon, right? And so the only challenge for me was balancing my athletic commitments with those class commitments. And so I made a mistake early in my sophomore year. I took a chemistry class, which required a lab in the afternoon, which was at the same time as practice. And so that class did not turn out well, but learned pretty quick how to, adjust the schedule to take classes that require labs, during the non-season.
Okay, that makes sense. And so looking back, would you want to kind of have that similar academic experience again with the block scheduling? Is that something that you would like support to other people who'd be interested in?
If you have the ability to, totally immerse yourself into something, yes. If you're someone that needs to be constantly busy with a lot of different things, it's probably not a good fit.
Got
The one thing that was challenging for me is, I mean, in my mind, I knew I wanted to be at a small school coming from Country Day. But there are, mornings that I woke up that would have loved to just sleep in and not go to class. But if you're in a class with 6 other people, it's really obvious when you don't show up.
Right.
And so, there's times where, I would have loved to be at a bigger state school where I was one of 50 plus and could kind of just hide and be a number at times. But I think it's probably better that I wasn't, because then it forced me to, really commit.
Yeah. Okay, so you go through Colorado College, you're playing sports, you're doing the block schedules, you're in the Grand Canyon, but you graduate. So you spent, like, I believe the first 2 jobs that you had out of college, you were doing sports sales. So share a little bit about that experience and what it means to work in a sales environment, because I think a lot of students see sales as something that they're really interested in doing for a good reason, but shed a little bit of light on, like, actually what does it mean to work in sales?
Sure. So, kind of starting, in college, being a geology major, I'm a perfect example of why everyone needs to take internships.
Yep.
My internships were in oil and gas industry. So I spent my summers in North Dakota, which was horrible. And I realized being a geologist is just living in the middle of nowhere, looking at sand all day.
Okay.
And that's where I learned it wasn't for me. I loved the classes. I loved the theory. I loved the science behind it, but I did not like the practical nature of what the job was. And so
Right.
I decided, kind of halfway through my senior year, I'm going to finish my degree, but being an athlete, loving sports, I want to work in sports. So I started off with a subsidiary of Major League Baseball, the Players Alumni Association, and then eventually transitioned into a sporting goods manufacturer called Harrow Sports that sells squash, field hockey, lacrosse, ice hockey, volleyball, equipment and apparel. And started in a sales position. So I was calling on coaches and youth directors and schools and anyone that would buy equipment. And I think, if anyone is interested in a sales profession, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is find a company that is going to invest in your development. I worked for a company that kind of just threw you out there and, it's a sink or swim. And so I was able to figure it out. A lot of people aren't.
Right.
You have to be, very comfortable with rejection, very comfortable putting yourself out there, calling people that don't know who you are, that you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
It's out of your comfort zone for sure. And so, but if you can find a company that can invest in your development and kind of ease you into it instead of just, throwing you off, that's, what I would recommend. And those are questions I would ask if you're going through an interview process with someone in a sales organization.
Perfect. So it sounds like you really have to be willing to basically like hustle to get the business and things like that. But it sounds like from the stuff that you learned when you were doing that, it's kind of like set you up for what your job is today. So you started your own business, was it like 3 years ago?
2017, yeah.
Okay. So kind of walk us through what was the need you were trying to fill in the market by creating this business, and what are some important first steps that people should consider if they want to start their own organization? Yeah,
so post athletics, working in that environment, I got a job in staffing, which is, a fairly common first role in the recruiting world. And did that for about 8 years and realized that it's, primarily focused on recruiting individuals out of one company into another, sending that person to 10 companies, and whoever can pay the most is where that person is going, and really doesn't factor in culture, really doesn't factor in development. And so I started my firm with kind of, the opposite idea. Is I wanted to focus on companies that wanted to recruit kind of from the bottom up, coming from an athletic mindset, right? It's that freshman class that's coming into a team every year, right? If you're talking about college football, right, you may hit the transfer portal for a great quarterback, but by and large, teams are built from their freshman classes. And so our firm focuses on that. We help small to mid-market companies create pipelines of entry-level talent and then help them develop that talent once they're there and then keep them long term. And so that's the problem, I guess, we're looking to solve with our business. And what I can say is, people that start their own business say yes to everything, figure out how, your idea for what your business is going to be might not end up being what it actually ends up being.
Yeah.
And so pivot with what comes to you and say yes to everything, and then figure out, where the market takes you. Right. And don't say no. Don't be stubborn in the fact that, hey, I want to do it this way. You do it in the way someone's going to pay you to do it. And that's what your business is.
Right. Okay. So that actually leads me to another question. So I think a lot of times students or even, younger alums will look at people and say, oh my gosh, like they seem like they have it all figured out. It was obviously very easy for them to start their business because they knew exactly what they were doing. So can you maybe dispel that a little bit or share kind of your own personal experience with that? Yeah,
I still don't know what I'm doing, right? I say I learn something new every day. I have no accounting background, so me trying to figure out QuickBooks on a daily basis is a pain, right? And so there's always things to learn, always things to make you better, right? I'd say, figure out how to work, figure out how to communicate well with others, and you can learn the rest along the way. You don't need to have a huge plan or a MBA degree that got you a business plan all lined up and funding. You can kind of just start and build things organically and work at it and change and pivot, and don't be afraid to ask for help. And things will eventually work themselves out, and you grow along the way.
Yeah. Okay. So how has your Country Day alumni network sort of played a role in what you're doing?
It's been tremendous, right? And so if I was looking at where all my revenue comes from, I could probably connect at least 40 to 50% of it to some Country Day connection. Now, it might not be someone who's a Country Day alum who's given me business, but they introduced me to someone who has introduced me to someone who ended up being a client, right? And so, growing up, my parents always kind of had the saying that life is a team sport, right? Which, falls right in line with the athletic background. But, there's no one that has achieved anything all by themselves, right? You need to rely on help. You need to rely on your family, your friends, your network, people you meet. And so if people leave with one piece of advice is ask for help, ask for a referral, ask for introductions that you could typically normally never get. Because they're going to lead you to conversations that help you refine what you're looking for and what you're doing.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we've heard that from so many alums over the course of this series, which is basically just build your network, always deliver on what you say you're going to deliver on, and always be open to meeting new people, even if those aren't necessarily a direct warm connection. You can always usually find someone who can introduce you. So absolutely. I love it. Yeah. Okay. So I think this is a little bit more topical, but since you're in the world of recruiting, what are trends or things that you're seeing or hearing out there in the market about what students and alumni should expect to see this year and next in terms of hiring or just general trends that you're hearing from your clients about COVID impacts?
Yeah, so when we talk about COVID impacts, most of our clients are still remote. They're depending on the industry, but they're working from home in a lot of cases. When a lot of college recruiting, and there's no's in Michigan that are allowing third-party visitors to come to campus this year, and so everything is remote. Okay. So being able to do virtual interviews, like a Zoom link or whatever platform the company uses is key. A lot of companies, especially the bigger ones, are switching to a one-way virtual interview where, it's not even like me talking to you. It's a question pops up on my screen and I get 5 minutes to answer it, which is just horrible.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's really hard to have a conversation without someone to play off of, especially in an interview where you're trying to create that bonding and rapport. So we're moving into a virtual world, and so where the onus was on the recruiters to connect with students, it's kind of reversed now. It's now on the student's responsibility to reach out to recruiters and business owners and managers, to make that impression. And it's really hard to do without face-to-face interactions.
Yeah. I love that. I just want to repeat back what you said, just because I think it's so important. So people should be prepared to do outreach on their own and not necessarily expect a recruiter to come to you. And you should also be ready for different interview styles, like having a question pop up to you on Zoom and be able to respond to that without having someone looking back at you, which sounds really challenging.
Yeah, no, it's a challenge. And so depending on the software platform, right, some of them, give you a 2 minutes to practice. Some of them, let you record twice, right? So figure out what each software does and figure out what works for you. The biggest advice that I've been giving students is don't practice, right? If you practice what your answer is going to be and then do it live, you forget things you said and it blends together. And did I say that the first time or did I say it this time? And use that 5-minute period to take notes and, calm yourself down and put together your thoughts and then roll into it. And it sounds more natural that way.
That's great advice. And are you seeing that companies, especially for college students, are hiring, or is it kind of like a freeze? Are you seeing people actually have the opportunity to get jobs out of school?
It's industry dependent. When you look at a lot of business services, their hiring needs are going up. When you're looking at maybe aerospace, manufacturing, some of the industries that have been impacted by COVID, those are going down. We saw a lot of internships over this past summer get canceled. Or delayed or shortened or affected in some way. Some of that is because of business needs. Some of it because there was a huge shortage of laptops this summer because every company in the country was going remote. So there's a lot of reasons. So it's different. The biggest difference we see or have been seeing is, when you and I graduated, the 2009, 2010, same type of thing where it was a down economy and companies weren't hiring. There was a huge influx of students that were doing graduate degrees. And we're seeing those head way down right now as well, because you're not going to invest, 30 to 100 grand in a law degree, MBA, advanced degree to do it virtually. So what people are going into is more of a true entry level position that maybe doesn't even require a college degree.
Wow. Okay.
And so those roles are abundant right now. And people are starting to realize that that's what they need to do right now just to get some work experience and earn some income.
Wow. Okay. That's fascinating. So for students and, anyone else who is about to go through the interview process, how do you approach Zoom interviews with your clients or people that you're working with? And I know that you touched on this a little bit earlier with the question that pops up on the screen, but what do you think hiring managers are looking for now that might be different from a regular in-person interview?
The ability to make connections is key, whether it's in person or not, right? And so when it comes down to it, right or wrong, people hire who they like. Unfortunately, they hire people who are like them, right? There's just that unconscious bias that you tend to hire people that are like you. And so the biggest thing is it's really hard to, create like a normal conversation on Zoom with a stranger. It's a lot easier to do in person. And so, just come in loose, relax, and do what you can to stand out, be yourself. We always tell candidates to break out of your cliche, right? Because the last thing I want is I'm going to ask cliche questions. And I don't want to hear just your cliche answers that you've rehearsed back, right? I don't know who you are at that point, and I don't create a connection with you. So showcase your personality, be who you are. If they don't like who you are, then I promise you're not going to like working there anyway. Right? And so just be yourself and try to create a connection with that person on the other side. Understand that they're probably going through hundreds of these conversations. Right. And they're trying to get through them quickly. Right. And so anything you can do to slow them down and create a pause and get them to actually have a conversation that's off topic is key.
Okay. What would you suggest for any kind of follow-up that needs to be done? Like, should students be thinking about doing anything outside of your traditional thank you note?
Yeah, so thank you notes are always key. It's kind of 50-50. Some recruiters love them and print them out and hang them on their walls. Some don't read them because they're all, the same anyway. It never hurts to send a thank you.
Right.
I say if you are going to send a thank you, don't make it just a cliche thank you for your time. Reference something you talked about in the interview and how you thought about it, or share an article that, reminds you of that conversation. Make it personal, so you can stand out in some way.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I will say is understand that an interview is more than just a time you talk to a person.
Right.
Your interview really starts the second that a recruiter knows your name. They're looking you up on LinkedIn, they're looking you up on Facebook, Instagram, right? If you think that companies don't use those tools to, do a little investigation on you, it's naive. Of course they are.
Very careful about what you put on your Instagram.
Yeah. Make everything private. Like that's the one piece of advice I can get. Like there's, unless you're trying to market yourself in some way, and that's what your field's in. Like if you're going for an accounting position, right? Your Instagram, there's no reason for your employer to ever see it, right? Just keep it private, and no bad can come from it. Understand that they're going to do a Google search. If you've worked places or went to schools, right? They might ask you for references, but those aren't the references they're calling. They're calling people that they know at those companies and at those schools to get kind of backdoor references on you. So leave every, conversation you have with other people in a positive way, because those are the people that are going to get called to say what they think about you. So understand that the interview process is from the second they know your name till the second they offer or decline you. And you kind of have to perform well through that entire process.
Okay. I think that's great advice. And I think the point about the fact that your interview starts the minute they know your name is so true. And I think that everyone needs to keep that in mind. So thank you for saying that. Okay. So what are some, just transitioning over to the resumes, which I probably should have started with before we got to the interview.
Yeah.
But what are some of the biggest resume issues you come across or see? And in this new, more virtual world, do you think the resume is playing a more important role?
I do. But with that being said, the average resume is looked at for like less than 20 seconds, right? Recruiters don't spend the time to read them. They read them later after the fact, after they weed through their stack. But really they're just looking for some keywords, right? That your major matches, that the GPA, if that's important to them, is where it needs to be. That maybe, what I look for in a resume more than anything else is the ability to multitask. Right? I would rather have the 3-2 student that is working 20 hours a week, that plays club sports, that is involved in clubs on campus, than a 4.0 student who all they do is school, right? Any job in any field, you're never only focused on that one thing, right? And so I want students that can multitask, and so that stands out to me more than anything. I think what recruiters notice more than anyone else is they all have pet peeves on resume. If you have spelling errors, if you have grammar errors, they pop out to us, right? We look at so many resumes and we just see them. If people have a sentence on the top of their resume that says looking for an internship at ABC company, right? And they don't change it and they send ABC company to XYZ company, right? That's an automatic throwaway because you don't have attention to detail.
Exactly. Yes. So true.
I have pet peeves on people that list the Microsoft Office suite as a skill, right? It's 2020. I expect that you know how to use Word and Excel. Right now, if you have the ability to do VLOOKUPs and pivot tables, right?
Sure.
Say that. But if you just know how to use PowerPoint, like, of course you do, right? I should know that. Right. Anyone that writes references available upon request, like, of course they are. If I'm going to request them, you're going to give them to me. Like, you don't need to say that. Formatting issues, weird fonts, weird texts. Anyone that lists hobbies is an automatic no for me.
Okay.
Like, I don't care that you like reading and are good at fantasy football. Like, it doesn't mean anything to me. If you're going to list a language on your resume, if that interview was in that language and you would do well in the interview, list that language. Right? Just because you took French like I did in high school and I can understand a few words does not mean I should ever list French on my resume. Right.
You're cracking.
It's just people put all these things on the resume because they think it makes them look better, but a lot of it's fluff, and recruiters just don't care.
Right. Okay. So I actually do have 2 questions regarding the resume. One I have very strong feelings about, and one I'm just honestly curious. What would you tell a student who has on their resume additional interests, and they might be like some niche interests, including something along the lines of like, not that this is niche, but like avid Michigan football fan. Because I've like seen in the past where a recruiter or a hiring manager will look at that and be like, oh, well, me too. I'm going to talk about this in the interview. So what is your take on that? I
can tell you I would never read it on my first pass through a resume, right? Will I look at a resume before I walk into an interview and talk about it? Yes, right. But realistically, it's not going to help you or hurt you get a position. I'd say if you're trying to keep your resume to one page, that's valuable space that maybe you're wasting.
Okay.
Realistically, recruiters are looking for skills, right? They're not looking for ways to connect with that person, right? They can figure that out on their own, right? And so
Yeah.
I personally wouldn't do it.
Okay.
But
No, great advice.
that's just me.
Second question is, and I have a very strong feeling on this, so I hope that you agree with me, but maybe won't. What should someone do with Detroit Country Day School? Should they leave that on their resume or should they take that off?
I would always have it on to a certain point, right? If you're still in college or you're just out of college, it is an incredibly valuable tool for a lot of different reasons. One is the school has a stigma of being a very successful academic school. It has a stigma of having great connections. So if I'm hiring you for a sales role, for example, and you went to Country Day, I think, well, you have a great network that maybe you can tap into that will benefit the business. Right. And so it's always great to, showcase Country Day or any type of high level prep school like that on a resume. I will say though, like I do see a lot of kids put their high school activities on their resume.
Okay.
Right. So I don't care that you were in, student government in high school, or even what your high school GPA was, or that you were on a sports team, or that you were a national honor society merit, whatever, right? That means nothing once you get to college, but having the fact that you're a graduate of the school is beneficial.
Very helpful, especially, in this area or whatever area you live in. If you have gone to, like you said, upscale private school.
Yeah. And I think Country Day students go all around the country for college, and the Country Day School around the country model is very well known. And so no matter where you are, people recognize that as a great educational background. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Thank you for answering all those questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's kind of pivot a little bit, because I want to share with our community just a little bit about the Country Day Alumni Council.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what it is, and as president, kind of what your role is, and then for people who want to get involved either in events and stuff that we do here or involved with the council in the future, how they can do that?
Absolutely. So the Alumni Council is primarily focused on two things. One is its continued engagement with current alumni, whether that's through learning opportunities or opportunities to give back or opportunities to connect with students, or opportunities just to be social amongst each other, right? It's a great network to be a part of. I'd say our other kind of big point is welcoming the current graduating seniors into the alumni community and connecting with them and helping them, whether it's getting a senior project or participating in a career day, or helping them out to meet someone in an industry or give them a job shadow or anything like that. I think that's a great function that we have, and really just be the voice of alumni on campus. And so the way that a student or an alumni could be involved, one is obviously we have tons of social activities, whether that's holiday parties or happy hours, or in the light of COVID happening, we'll be doing dinner and wine tastings virtually, right? And so those are a lot of different ways that you can be involved. Our alumni, like I mentioned, help staff a lot of the career day that happens every other year, and help judge science fair and things like that. And so I guess whatever your passion was or is with the school, or was or is when you were in school, right? There's a way that you can get involved in some capacity as an alumni with the current students. And so I'd say there's 43, 45 members of the Alumni Council as of right now. We do new elections every year. So if you want to have your voice be heard and be part of those conversations, we're always looking for new members. You can get involved in different committees within the council to help on areas that you care about more, whether that's business networking or diversity and inclusion, or helping plan homecoming, right? There's tons of different ways that you can be involved and give back to the school that so many of us owe a lot to.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thanks, Joey. This was all super interesting and helpful. fun. And we really appreciate your time. So if anyone has additional questions, is it okay for them to reach out directly to you? And if so, can you share your contact information?
Absolutely. So I'd say the easiest way to get in contact with me is find me on LinkedIn. And join if any alumni are in here, join the Country Day alumni page on LinkedIn. It's a great way to stay in touch with alums. But also, Annie, if you want to send out my email address to anyone, feel free to do that. More than happy to talk to or help anyone that I can.
Awesome.
Would love to stay in touch with anyone. I will say one more thing that I completely forgot to mention when talking about resumes that is a huge issue that I've noticed. Take your address off it.
Okay.
Right. And so for two reasons. One is, because Country Day students love to travel and, from Michigan, but love to work in New York or San Francisco or anywhere in between, right? Having an address that is not in that location is going to give recruiters pause because they think, I have to pay to relocate this person. And that might not be the case. On the other hand, certain cities tend to lend to a unbiased discrimination. Mm-hmm. Right. And so if you live in a town that is predominantly one race or ethnic background and a hiring manager has a bias against that, right, mm-hmm. that might hurt you. Right. And so mm-hmm. there's no good that can come from having your address on your resume. So always take it off.
Great. That is great advice. I've actually never heard that tip before. So thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
Again, Joey, this was great. And we will see you soon.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Bye.
Bye-bye.